This isn't about the thunder of artillery or the flash of missile strikes. It's about something far quieter and more devastating. A slow, grinding erosion of the very foundation that holds an army together. When soldiers no longer believe in their orders, when they lose trust in their leaders, the battle is already lost. Because beneath the loud noise of the battlefield, a silent collapse is beginning. Orders are being issued, but they're being met with doubt. Reinforcements are promised, but they never arrive. And in that void of purpose, a new kind of crisis emerges.
On the morning of March 12, 2025, at 4:30 a.m., a squad of Russian soldiers near the village of Verkhnii Svirsk turned their weapons not toward the enemy, but toward their own commander. It wasn't an act of rebellion, but of desperation. They had been sent on what they knew was a suicide mission, an unsupported charge against the heavily fortified Ukrainian position. They refused to die for nothing. Moments later, they laid down their arms and surrendered to Ukrainian forces. This was not a battlefield accident. This was an act of defiance, and it sent a clear signal to Western intelligence. Russia's war effort is not just failing on the front lines, it is breaking from within. While the world watches the dramatic confrontations of tanks and trenches, something far more dangerous is happening behind the lines. Morale is disintegrating. Discipline is fading. Trust is vanishing. And when a military superpower begins to crumble from the inside, the final outcome is no longer a question of who has the bigger army. It becomes a matter of time. This event in Verkhnii Svirsk was a clear sign that the Russian military is experiencing a crisis that no amount of firepower can fix. It is a crisis of confidence, a crisis of leadership, and a crisis that a rigid top-down command structure cannot comprehend or contain.
But how did an army with such power fall into chaos so quickly? The answer lies in a staggering human cost that has bled the military dry from the inside out. Since the full-scale invasion, Russia's most experienced combat units, the special forces, the seasoned contract soldiers, the career officers, have been decimated. Moscow has tried to fill this void by drafting a new generation of soldiers. Tens of thousands of young men from distant, forgotten villages and ethnic enclaves. These are men with almost no combat experience, barely any training, and little to no belief in the mission. Once on the front lines, these new recruits face brutal conditions. They were promised modern equipment, but were often given rifles with broken scopes, body armor from the Soviet era, and radios that could only be used to talk to a broken command chain. In the freezing winter, many were left without proper winter gear. Ammunition is rationed, supplies are delayed, and the most terrifying truth of all is that no one has an evacuation plan. In such an environment, morale doesn't just decline, it disintegrates entirely. Reports have quietly surfaced of conscripts intentionally injuring themselves to avoid the front lines. Others simply vanish into the night, and the ones who remain simply follow commands without conviction, waiting for their turn to die. Back in Russia, the government does everything it can to hide the reality. State media avoids showing funerals, and officials release vague casualty figures or deny them altogether. But the truth is visible in the desolate towns where families are burying their sons in silence. For every medal received, there is 100 families left in confusion, wondering why they never got a phone call or why a coffin arrived with no name. This quiet erosion of trust is not a force that can be stopped by tanks or missiles. It is a slow-burning fire that is chipping away at the very loyalty that once held Russian society together.
But numbers alone don't break armies. Weak command systems do. Russia's military has always operated on a rigid, top-down structure, where orders flow from the highest ranks with unquestioning discipline expected at every level. On paper, this centralization ensures control. But in the fluid chaos of a war zone like Ukraine, it becomes a fatal weakness. When a leader is killed or disabled, the unit is often left paralyzed, a headless snake, unsure of how to continue without direct orders. Unlike flexible NATO forces that empower junior officers to make quick decisions, Russian commanders rarely give their subordinates the authority to act on their own. Ukraine understood this flaw from the beginning. Instead of just targeting tanks and logistics, they began a focused campaign to remove the leaders. It's a strategy that is producing devastating results. Ukraine's decapitation strikes aren't just a slogan. They are a methodical campaign executed with precision.
Using suicide drones, long-range artillery, and guided missile systems, Ukrainian forces have made it their mission to find and strike Russian command posts. Ukrainian intelligence identifies these targets through intercepted signals, thermal drone footage, and reports from resistance cells operating behind enemy lines. When a Russian officer is eliminated, it doesn't just remove a tactical brain, it sends a shockwave of panic and indecision through the ranks. Junior soldiers feel abandoned, communication breaks down, units hesitate to advance, unsure who is in charge. These psychological effects are visible across multiple front lines. Formations become defensive, sometimes refusing to move at all. The problem doesn't stop there. It's bleeding into Russia's internal military structure. With commanders consistently killed, trust in leadership evaporates. Soldiers begin to believe they're being used as cannon fodder, especially when they receive unclear orders or none at all.
As Russia runs out of domestic manpower, the Kremlin has turned to foreign fighters to fill the ranks. Thousands of international recruits have reportedly joined Russian forces, stepping into roles left empty by wounded, killed, or deserting Russian troops. For Moscow, this move offers a quick solution: more bodies on the ground, more firepower in hand. But the reality behind the scenes is far more complicated. These are not just support troops. They are being deployed in combat zones, often without full integration into Russian units. The biggest issue is a chaotic mix of communication and doctrine. Russians speak Russian, mercenaries from far-flung regions speak their own languages. In an environment where speed and clarity are everything, these linguistic barriers are not just inconvenient, they are deadly. There have been multiple reports of friendly fire incidents where foreign units accidentally engaged Russian troops due to miscommunication or poor coordination. Beyond language, the clash of tactical doctrines causes further chaos. When these groups are placed together in the same mission, orders are misunderstood, timing falls apart, and units move in different directions. Instead of strengthening the Russian force, these foreign additions can break the rhythm of an already struggling army. But the problems aren't confined to the front lines. The war is bleeding Russia's economy dry. The Kremlin is now spending over 40% of its national budget just to keep the military running. That means everything else, schools, hospitals, and infrastructure, is running on fumes. Roads aren't maintained, teachers are quitting, and clinics are closing down. Russian citizens are watching their daily lives crumble while the government pours every coin into keeping the war machine alive. And with sanctions choking off trade and blocking access to vital technology, Russia doesn't have many ways to refill its bank accounts. As the economy shrinks and the military breaks down, Russia's most valuable asset is fleeing by the millions. Since the invasion began, over 1 million people have left the country. These aren't just tourists. They are doctors, software engineers, scientists, and professors. These are the sharpest minds in the country, the people who were supposed to build Russia's future. Instead, they are building futures in other countries. This brain drain is doing long-term damage, killing the future back home. When a country starts to lose both its money and its people, its strength collapses from within. That's the real danger facing Russia now. Not just defeat on the battlefield, but a slow structural collapse at home.
The rebellion in Verkhnii Svirsk wasn't an isolated case. It was a clear signal that Russia's war machine is breaking down from within. With a collapsing command structure, demoralized conscripts, and a drained war budget, the Russian military is entering a dangerous zone where recovery is almost impossible. Soldiers are no longer fighting for victory. They're fighting for survival in a war their leaders can no longer control. This isn't about one failed mission or one lost city. It's about a slow, painful unraveling of a once feared force. Russia isn't losing because of one single battle. It's losing because every part of its system, from command to logistics to loyalty, is falling apart. If these trends continue, Ukraine may not need a grand offensive to win. Victory could come not from tanks breaking lines, but from soldiers simply walking away. The real fight isn't on the front line. It's in the quiet psychological war for control of Russia's own ranks. The countdown has already started, and the end won't come with a bang, but with a breakdown. This is how an empire begins to fall apart, not through one major defeat, but through 1,000 small breakdowns that no one reports until it's too late. This is what we wanted to share with you today, bringing you the most honest and up-to-date insights from analysts and experts. If you found this analysis valuable, please consider giving us a like and subscribing for more in-depth content. We also want to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below and tell us what you think. We'll see you in the next video.